The following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
Okay.
Thank you, Tally Olson. I am back. You are comfortably zoned with the Zigzag Man. I'm in Alameda, California. They call me the Tokin Jew. Tokin with an I. So, give you an idea where I am. I get to speak to some of the most interesting people on the planet week after week. Two of those who have been stellar guests on my program are both here at the same time. Matthew DiBiase, how are you?
I'm pretty good. Ralph. Very good. It's great being back. It's been a long time. Much too long.
It has indeed, and as you know, I'm thrilled to have you. And I get to be joined by kind of a pinch hitter tonight. Jerry Feitelberg is here, and he is going to help me fill up some airtime. I'm recovering from slight effects of COVID, and it slowed me down intellectually. How about that? Can you imagine slow an adult down? How much slower could it get? So we're gonna talk about the evil that is Trump and all he has wrought. I'm going to start the conversation with Matthew, and you and Jerry have a good time. I'll be here. I'll be chipping in, but you take it. Matthew DiBiase.
Jerry, when you look at the hearings, I mean, especially not today's hearings, but I think with the Tuesday's hearings, did you get the sense of that Trump is Hitler in the bunker? Do you get that same feeling that you're dealing with, just like Hitler in the bunker, you got the Donald in his bunker here? I mean, what is your feeling about that, Jerry?
Well, I did watch the hearings today, and it just reinforced my opinion that this man is totally evil.
Yeah.
And he will violate and push every norm to the limit. And breaking laws doesn't matter as long as it benefits him. He doesn't care. And he will throw anyone and everyone under the bus unless they swear total loyalty to him. And the thing which makes the United States different is that we don't swear loyalty to an individual. We swear loyalty. We affirm an oath to the Constitution to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States. For those that have served in the military, the judges do it, all the political people do it. They all take that oath to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States. And what this guy was trying to do was overthrow a fair and free election that was done in November 2020. And as Judge Carter said, it was a coup looking for a legal theory. And
yep.
And it was a coup. And Judge Ludwig today said it was a revolution. Had that gone through, it was totally revolution. There would be a total revolution of the American way of life.
In a sense, it's just like Hitler's beer hall putsch in 1923. I mean, 99 years ago. I mean, here's the Donald's putsch right here. And thing is, I know we believe in the Constitution, but what's unsettling, Jerry and Ralph, is that you have this minority, a very well-armed minority that was quite willing to, violate the Capitol building, murder police officers, murder legislators, male and female. They were quite prepared to commit mass overthrow constitutional government at the behest of this raving madman here. And that's the fact that you have these vigilantes, these very well-armed vigilantes with their AR-15s. It may be a minority, but the frightening aspect is there are evidences in history of well-armed minorities able to majorities and create fascist rule. I mean, look at the Bolsheviks in Russia. I mean, they were a minority, yet they were able to, enslave Russia. Even the Nazis were never, ever a true majority party, yet they were able to seize power, get strategically placed in the key organs of government, and then use those organs to convert Germany into a Nazified state, a fascist, murderous state there. And that's the frightening aspect. In other words, the threat is here. It's real, and we're experiencing it throughout the whole nation. All aspects. You're seeing vigilante groups. Like those people up in Idaho. I mean, in that U-Haul truck, they would go a couple thousand miles just to destroy, hurt gay people. Or you have that, Ryan that Gendron murdering, African Americans in a grocery store. I mean, you're seeing these pogroms here, these little aspiring concentration camp guards wanting to prove their so-called worth to their Führer and all that.
Yeah, you're seeing it across the country with the number of people that are running for Secretary of State. You saw it in New Mexico this week, where 3 commissioners in one county in New Mexico didn't like the results, so they weren't going to certify the election. And they were ordered by the state Supreme Court that they had to do so. And one of the commissioners said, "What are you going to do? Throw me in the pokey?" And the answer is yes. If you don't do what you're supposed to do, so you're seeing they're moving ahead in many states across the country. They're passing legislation to suppress the vote. The Republicans know that they can't win without suppressing the vote. They don't want the minorities to vote, and they'll do whatever it takes to keep them from voting. They're trying to get in to take over the school boards, the city councils. You're seeing book burnings in parts of the country that they don't like what's being published, and yet they want to have freedom. They claim they want freedom of speech. No, don't violate their First Amendment rights. But they're burning books, and this is what they did in Nazi Germany. You have to remember that when Trump was a child, he had a copy of Mein Kampf by his bed, and his father was Nazi sympathizer or actual Nazi. Attended the Bund meetings in New York just prior to in the late 30s, maybe early 40s, before the United States was entered into the war.
Yeah.
So today was quite interesting. One of the things that came out of today's hearings was that one of the Proud Boys said that had they were able to get their hands on Mike Pence, they would have killed him, and they would have gotten their hands on Nancy Pelosi, they would have killed her too. And this is how serious it was.
Yeah, I'll tell you this, Jerry. I don't think it would have stopped with the murder of Vice President Pence or Speaker Nancy Pelosi. I mean, they wanted to kill AOC. They wanted to kill her. They wanted to kill Schumer, Schiff. I think what you would have seen is if they had been able to take them all intact, or the vast majority of them, I think what you would have seen is the ultimate snuff film. I think that just imagine to any type of aspiring fascist seeing snuff films of the execution of AOC, the execution of Representative Omar, Nancy Pelosi, Vice President Pence. I mean, just simple mass murder. They all would have been killed. And that's the kicker of it. Even the ones who backed Trump, like Cruz and Jordan and Boebert, and I think they all would have been killed, because when you think about it, in a dictatorship, you don't need a legislature. You don't need a Supreme Court. In a sense, they're like a millstone around your neck. I mean, I think it would have been the ultimate double cross. They all would have been butchered, and it all would have been on videotape as well.
Yeah, what's going on is unbelievable. There are some people are talking about should the committee make criminal referrals to the Justice Department.
No, let me interject. Let me interject. Whether they do or not, it is my opinion that the Biden DOJ will not do what it takes to put Trump against the wall. And I seriously think that our Constitution is at peril because of one of the reasons, because of Hunter Pence and the goods that they have against Hunter Pence. I'm sorry, Hunter Biden.
Yes, sir.
I fear whatever the committee comes up with, the DOJ will find a reason. They may pull a Gerald Ford thing where they just don't want to disturb the temperament of the country and this, that, and the other thing. But I don't think that Biden's DOJ will not disappoint.
Ralph, there are two things going on with the Department of Justice. One school of thought is that they may be reluctant to indict and prosecute a former president because when the shoe is on the other foot, the Republicans will indict and go after the Democratic president. Also, the thing is, if they should indict him, they fear that there will be more riots and more insurrections raging around the country as people express their displeasure and at Trump being indicted and perhaps convicted. The other school of thought is if you don't do anything, it's going to be worse. They're going to continue to do it, and we're going to have an authoritarian government. There have to be consequences for their actions. If we believe in the rule of law, we have to believe that no person, including the president, former president, is above the law. If you did a quarter or 1/10 of what Trump did, you'd be in a federal prison somewhere, Ralph.
Right.
Yeah. Now, I'll tell you this. I want to add to Jerry. Jerry, I'm part of the latter thing, saying it's imperative that we have to act. I mean, tomorrow is the 50th anniversary of Watergate. And, back then, Watergate was the greatest presidential scandal of all time. But now, with Trump's presidency, his whole presidency dwarfs anything the worst of Watergate here because his entire 4 years was nothing but a crime. It wasn't an administration. It was a deliberate criminal conspiracy, in my view, that it seized the organs of American government and used it for criminal purposes to overthrow democracy and to destroy innocent peoples. Anyone who had the moral courage to oppose Trumpism or their fascist rule. That's my personal feeling about it. I mean, I know. I was listening to MSNBC the other night, and one theory was Neil Katyal was saying what Garland is doing is he's allowing the hearing to kind of, quote, educate the American people. In other words, help the American people understand the legal underpinnings here. Then you proceed with the prosecution because now you see the evidence before you and you see how deep it really went and how dangerous threat to democracy truly was. I hope Katyal's theory is correct. I'm hoping he's right, but you just don't know. Here's one thing, though. Let's say the DOJ does grow a pair and they do the right thing. They indict Trump and they actually send the arrest warrant. It would not surprise me if Trump got tipped off, and he flees the country. But when he flees the country, though, what he's going to do is he's going to tell his vigilantes. Here's my prediction. If there is an arrest warrant for Trump, either if he's apprehended or if he flees the country, what you're going to see is like a nationwide pogrom, kind of like a 21st century version of Kristallnacht, where his vigilantes all over the country start striking at synagogues, black churches, Planned Parenthoods, schools where they're predominantly minority students. In other words, a coordinated attack against non-white peoples, against Jewish peoples, anyone who was a public enemy of Trump. It would not surprise me if there is some type of 21st century version of Kristallnacht, in my view.
Yeah, I think that's something that they have to take into consideration. And Merrick Garland said that when he was watching the hearings, and they said, "Are you going to watch all of them?" He says, "I'm not sure, but there are people at my department. The prosecutors are watching, so they are watching what's going on." And and I'm quite sure that there's sufficient evidence. There's more than enough evidence to indict him and to bring him into a court.
Yeah.
And I think that we're living in such dangerous times, and with such a split in the country. This whole thing, how the popular vote doesn't necessarily get you a win. You have this, so many of the smaller states where they have the electoral college is shifted into their favor, and we know why it was done, because back when they wrote the Constitution, they wanted to protect the smaller states from the bigger states dominating.
Yeah.
So we can understand it, but it's an idea whose time is past, because it's not fair. Why should a voter in Wyoming have more representation than 40 million people in California? In order for California to have any sort of representation in the Senate, we'd have to split into 8 states, and then we'd have 16 senators, which could change the balance. And it's the same thing with the Supreme Court. There's no reason why we have to have 9. On the appeals courts, as many as 20 jurors on an appeals court. So you could have more. You could have more, and they're politicizing the Supreme Court. They're supposed to be fair and impartial, but they're not.
I know. So, you need some type of judicial reform. I think what you need is like an official code of ethics, because before there is no official code of ethics. I mean, basically the police themselves. But now with these Clarence Thomas and his wife's revelations here, I think you need some type of reform where there are actual things. In other words, what you can't do, and if you violate these things, then hey, out you go, and you can get removed and all that. I mean, I think you need some type of reform in that instance. I personally am still a bit leery about adding to the court, but the thing is, I don't know. I'm still kind of leery about it. I know, Ralph, you were always big on that, adding more and all that. I think someone once said if you have a proportion, I think it should be 13 instead of 9, and balanced on the population, because when they made it at 9, it was based on some ratio of population, was it 1869 and thereabouts, and it stuck. But if you had it really set to today's population, it should be like 13 members, something like that. I remember seeing that on MSNBC. They were talking about it like months ago, that effect and all that. But also, you got to break the filibuster too. That's the real logjam, breaking the filibuster. And you have Manchin and Sinema playing their both ends, all 7 ends against the middle. I mean, that's another frustrating aspect as well, and all that. That's what makes these congressional elections, in November, especially imperative. And the Republicans are playing games to make sure that there is no Democratic majority anymore. And that's the dismaying aspect of it, Jerry and Ralph.
Hey, we've also got Roe v. Wade to contend with.
Yeah, I know.
As if things aren't harrowing enough.
I know. I mean, anyone who's got young girls at home, girls of age, childbearing years, I mean, it's a very frightening aspect. I mean, I have no children of my own, but I mean, I have, cousins, they've got young girls, growing up, what type of world are they going to inhabit? I mean, Jerry, do you have daughters and granddaughters?
I have 2 daughters, and I have a step-granddaughter, yeah. So, yes, my late wife was a very vocal feminist. She was a pro-choice activist. She went to Washington in 2004 when they had the Women's March on Washington. Yeah. And she was, the funny part, or the sad part about it, is that in 1972, we were expecting our second child at that point. Yeah. And my wife was having a very difficult pregnancy, and she had to stop working. She was in her 5th month. They put her on drugs, and then she had a spontaneous abortion, and we lost the child. And
I didn't know that, John. Oh,
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So sorry.
So sorry.
It was a traumatic day, but she recovered. Then we had my second daughter, and so when a woman has an abortion, whatever it can be traumatic. But what they want is to have people who have been attacked either through rape or incest to have the child. And you're going to have and they don't care what happens to the child after it's born.
Yeah.
And the woman is forced to have the child, and she's going to look at that child and remember what happened to her and probably hate the child for the rest of her life. What kind of life is that? They don't really care what happens to the child. And, I mean, but the broader thing is, though, it's the subjugation of the American woman and, by extension, young American girls. I mean, that's what it is. It's an enhancement of that political subjugation, economic subjugation, sexual subjugation, even career opportunity subjugation in that sense. I mean, it's all based on oppression and subjugation. Well, they want to control their lives from cradle to grave, I guess, and they want to have a lot of people are still a lot of Republicans are still pissed off that I think I forgot what amendment was, but the one passed and allowed women to vote. Yeah. A lot of them still are incensed about that. There's a lot of Republicans are incensed about Social Security. They're incensed about Medicare. All these things that were benefits to people. There are European countries, Catholic countries in Europe that have abortion. I believe Ireland, which is a fiercely Catholic country, has abortion.
Yeah.
So it's just amazing. And, we've got serious problems in this country. And a lot of the things that Trump stands for were what Hitler stood for: white supremacy, hate group. One group hates the other group. You have the Ku Klux Klan. You have Nazi sympathizers in this country, and we have a lot of diversity in the country. People when in the early part of the 20th century, the late 19th century, when they had waves of immigration from Europe, you had a lot of Jews, you have a lot of Irish, you had a lot of Italian. In Boston, where I grew up, when the Yankees or the Brahmins ruled, they used to have signs, Irish need not apply. The Irish were discriminated. Then the Irish took over and had political power and still have political power in the city of Boston. Down in Florida, they used to have, in the South, they had segregated water coolers, bathrooms, and there used to be signs, no Jews allowed in certain of the hotels in Miami Beach back in the day. And all those things are gone. We don't want to go back there. But now we have different types of immigrants. We have them coming from Asia. We have a large in the Bay Area. Yeah. We have a large population from India. We have a lot of engineers, a lot of doctors. My PCP is an Indian lady. My dermatologist is an Indian lady, and they're very capable. There's a lot of in fact, the dermatologist, her husband's a doctor, her mother and father are doctors, her brothers are doctors, and they're all making contributions to the betterment of the health of the people in the community. Yeah. You also have here we have a lot of people. From all the different Asian countries. We have a Japanese population, large Chinese population, people from Thailand, all making contributions to the economy. They work hard. The kids go to school. They make contributions. And, it's not going to be an all-white world forever. Yeah. But that's the beauty of America, that people come here. And another thing is that a lot of the people, a lot of the dreamers that came here, the Hispanic kids that were brought here as kids, and they're sort of in a never land. They haven't become citizens yet because their parents were here illegally. But a lot of them, guess what happened to them? A lot of them enlisted in the military and were on the front lines in Iraq and Afghanistan. And they serve the country, and it's really amazing. So,
to echo that, Jerry, did you see on the news there's 3 Americans being held by the Russians, and one of them is I think he's like Laos, Vietnamese. I mean, he's American citizen though, but he was so compelled at the plight of the Ukrainian people that he actually went to Ukraine to volunteer his services to help them defend their country and all that. He's a United States citizen, but the thing is now he's been captured by the Russians. But here he is, an American of Vietnamese ancestry, yet he wants to save the Ukrainian people from Russian oppression and all of that. And now he's a POW and all of that. I mean, that echoes what you're saying, Jerry. I mean, to add further is, I remember I was doing some research on the 2020 census, and the conclusion is that 2 out of every 5 Americans now is non-white. And what you have is this right-wing fascist fear is it's the old, there's too many of, quote-unquote, them, and there's not enough of us. And I think there's that demographic thing that sometime in the 2030s, I forget what year it is, they calculate, and I keep forgetting what it is. I think it's like the late 2030s. There will be no majority race left. In other words, white America will become the new minority race, and it's that fear. It is that fear that I think that motivates the racist vigilantism of the Trumpites and all that. In other words, the desire, they want to redress the balance by overthrowing democracy and then engage in mass murder. In other words, get rid of them and make the world safe for us, even if we have to destroy the Constitution to do it. And that's exactly what they're trying to do.
Yeah. You see the idiocy of what Trump did. First thing he did was a Muslim ban.
Yeah.
And then they got it down to seven Muslim countries. Well, my daughter is going with a gentleman who's from Persian descent.
Yep.
And his parents, he's an atheist, and his parents live in Tehran. So his sister lives here. His sister lives in Alameda, and she had a baby a couple of years ago. So her parents wanted to come to see the baby. You know what they had to do? They had to go. They rented an Airbnb place up in Vancouver, Canada.
Yeah.
So her parents flew from Tehran to Vancouver and were able to spend 2 or 3 months here, visiting with their children.
Yeah.
How stupid is that? Her parents are retired. Her father's an engineer. Mother's, I think, a teacher, and they'd like to come to the United States to visit their children. They have relatives here. Many relatives here, and they can't get here.
Yeah, Ralph. Yeah, Ralph.
I was going to say how few people qualify financially to be able to do something to get together with their families. That's a big deal. That didn't come easy. A lot of planning, a lot of governments involved. We live in a really screwed up world at this point. I want to ask you guys in conclusion, give me some hope out of all this. What do you see hopeful? Matthew first.
Oh, jeez, man. I think these hearings got to keep going on, man. They just got to get the truth out. I mean, you're not going to sway the Republicans, the real hardcore Trump believers, because I see enough internet chatter, Facebook chatter. They don't even watch they don't even watch the things because they're so wrapped up in their own delusion that they don't want to see that. Yeah, that you got duped. You people got duped. You got fooled, man. You got fooled, and no one wants to admit that. Hey, you got played for a fool. You got played for a chump. That you're worshiping a false Christ. But it's like my old maxim, Ralph. The false Christ you worship is the reflection of your own evil. But I think I'm kind of like FDR. There were times when FDR, it looked like he wasn't really doing anything, but he had this phrase he called, "I'm rubbing my hands together and trusting in God." In other words, he would let time work its magic. You can't sometimes jump immediately. You got to wait. You got to wait for your enemies to hang themselves, make royal fools of themselves. And under FDR's presidency, that's how he was able to succeed, because sooner or later his enemies would always cut their own throats with their own stupidity and their own incompetence. And in a sense, that's my little naive hope. I hope that's what it is. In other words, if time tells, it's kind of like McCarthy. It took 4 years, and then finally in '54, Edward R. Murrow did his expose on McCarthy, and then you had the Army hearings that really brought the house down on him and ended his reign of terror and all that. Sometimes time takes time. I mean, I don't know, but in a sense, I'm impatient for action. I want something to happen. I want the bastard in jail. I want his whole bloody lot in bloody jail where they bloody belong. What I want is a Nuremberg-type trial where they're all in the dock. But I think that's what you need is a Nuremberg-type trial. What do you think, Jerry?
Yeah, I agree with you because he has a lot of enablers. He had the Jim Jordans, the Andy Biggs, the Paul Gosars, the Louis Gomers, Marjorie Taylor, Green, Lauren Boebert. These people who shouldn't be in Congress. They're not qualified to be in Congress.
Yeah.
And so, but what I'm looking for from Biden right now, the most important thing that the Democrats can do right now is to get some relief on the inflation front. People can only see at the tip of their nose. They go to the gas pump, they put in 20 gallons of gas, and it's $130. In California, it's $140. It's really expensive, between $6 and $7 a gallon. So, and then they go to the grocery store, and everything is more expensive. So the most important thing is to get the cost down or inflation under control in those two areas on gasoline and food, because that's what people affect the most. So if they can do that, and I wish that the hearings would have been closer to the election, but I think that they have some sort of policy that they don't want to do anything within 90 days of the election that might affect the election. Well, that's what they used to do in the old days. They should say, well, Trump wouldn't stop Trump. He would do anything he could to get elected. It didn't matter to him. So they have to review that. But I think I'm hopeful that the Justice Department is not going to fail us. I disagree with Ralph. I think the Justice Department is paying much attention to what they're seeing. Today, they saw many violations of the law in regard to this. An interesting thing came out today that John Eastman was looking for a pardon, was seeking a pardon. He tried to contact Julian.
And they all were. Those congressmen, they all were too, not just Eastman. Perry and them, they were begging for it and all that. Here's another thing I want to add. About a month or so ago, on my own personal podcast, The Package Tourist, I had this anti-terrorism expert. I think his last name was Jeffrey Simon or something like that. He's a top terrorism expert, published multiple books on international and domestic terrorism. And we talked about what were his feelings? Was he apprehensive? He actually, like you, Jerry, he actually believes that the system will work, that we shouldn't yield to despair, that the system will work and that Trumpism will eventually be prosecuted. I don't know what it's based on. I hope he's correct. I mean, I was a bit surprised that he said that, because I'm actually more pessimistic, as it were. But I mean, this guy was a renowned expert too, and working with the State Department and all that, and multiple presidential administrations, teaching at Stanford and all that. But he seemed hopeful though, and I hope he's correct. I hope to God he's correct for all our sakes.
Yeah. One other thing.
Ralph. I just want to make a point.
I just want to say, if gun control isn't taken care of, we're doomed.
Yeah. Well, I'll say this: Second Amendment absolutism made Trumpism possible. As long as they get your AR-15s, those are fascist weapons. If you need a fascist overthrow, then your cadre must have AR-15s. That's why they refuse to go along with any ban on the AR-15, because that's not a defensive weapon. That's a mass murder weapon and a fascist weapon.
Okay, Jerry, I interrupted you.
I was listening to Matthew. I lost my train of thought, so forget about it.
The courts?
All right,
the courts?
At least you have a train of thought.
Yeah.
Let's put put it that way, a train of thought to lose is a valuable commodity in today's day and age.
Yeah.
Hey, thank you, gentlemen. What a terrific, realistic, depressing in a way, but informative podcast. We didn't pull any punches.
Right.
We're not Pollyanna. None of that.
Right.
So,
well, the neat thing, Ralph, is when you post it, we'll share it on Facebook, and it'll goes all over the world.
Yeah.
So we don't know who's going to listen.
Yeah, we got to bear witness. It's up to us to bear witness to the truth. Even I know we may be putting ourselves at risk, but the thing is, if we don't, the risks are still the same. We've got to speak. We've got to speak.
Yeah. One last thing, Matthew. You brought up Kristallnacht, November 9th, 1938.
Yeah.
I was born on that exact date.
Wow. Gee.
Wow.
How is that?
I know.
How is that?
I know, man. Yeah. But we got to stop them, man. We got to stop them. For everyone, to save innocent lives, hundreds, thousands, perhaps millions, we've got to stop them.
Yeah, it's one of the things that you can read is Philip Roth's book, The Plot to Kill America. HBO did it.
Yeah.
And it's very frightening. And this is sort of along those lines, to install a fascist government.
Yeah.
And and once they're in, the pogroms will start, the roundups will start.
Yeah.
Once they control the military and they install their people in the military, God knows what will happen.
Yeah. Yeah. We need to do this again. We got to do this again.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank
Jerry
you.
Feitelberg and Matthew DiBiase. A terrific show. Thanks for listening, everybody.
Yeah.
It's the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. I'm proud of what we're doing.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Adios and happy trails.
Bye. Good night, Ralph. Bye-bye.
Good night.
The proceeding has been a Comfortably Zoned Network production. You are advised to keep your dreams wet, your humor dry, your children and grandchildren out of military recruiting offices and off the laps of clerics who wear dresses. Thank you for listening, everyone. Happy trails.